students, welcome to Sunil's tutorial. I'm Sunil Mirwani and today we'll be doing this chapter called as circulation. Let's see what is lymph. What do I understand by lymph? Now what do I understand by lymph? It is nothing but it is a modified tissue fluid that has the same composition as the intestinal fluid. What is lymph? It is modified tissue fluid that has the same composition as intestinal fluid. Right? That is what is lymph. So it is a liquid that has a composition similar to the composition that is there in your intestine. Right? It is nothing but it is clear water appearing fluid containing large number of lymphocytes and there are no blood platelets present in it. So same composition as the intestinal fluid. How does it appear? It is clear water. It is clear water appearing fluid. Right? It is a clear water appearing fluid. What does it contain? It containing large number of lymphocytes. But no blood platelets. Right? The protein concentration in the lymph varies between 2 to 4.5 grams per deciliter and it is near to that of a tissue fluid. Protein concentration in the lymph varies between 2 to 4.5 grams per deciliter. And because of this protein concentration, it is a tissue fluid because tissues have this kind of protein concentration. And it is near to tissue fluid. Okay, so that is what is lymph, right? How is the lymph formed? Let's see formation of lymph. Now, lymph is formed from the pressure of the blood in the lymph is formed when pressure of the blood in the capillaries increases. The intestinal fluid containing water and dissolved solutes is filtered out from the blood plasma through the capillary walls into the tissue space, and that's how lymph tissue is formed. So when you have blood that has to squeeze in through the capillaries, it is at that point of time that squeezing process results in the formation of lymph. So how is lymph formed? When, in a layman's language, when blood has to squeeze in through the capillaries, that squeezing process would only allow the liquid, that's your clear water liquid, and lymphocytes to go in through, and that compression of that blood would result in the formation of lymph. Right? So how is it formed? It is formed when the pressure of blood in capillaries increases. Right? Intestinal fluid containing water and dissolved solutes. Solutes is filtered out of blood. blood plasma through the capillary walls. The capillary walls into the tissue space to form tissue fluid. Right? So you would have intestinal fluid and solutes that would be filtered out from blood plasma through the capillary walls into the tissue space to form tissue fluid. And when this fluid flows through the lymphatic vessels, and this tissue flows through lymphatic vessels, then it is called as lymph.
So what about RBCs? They're not in lymph?
No, there are no RBCs either, right? They are made up of only leukocytes. Why do I need lymph in the body? Let's see the functions of lymph. Why do I need lymph in the body? What are the functions of lymph? First, it supplies absorbed fats from the intestine to the venous blood in the form of cyclomicron droplets. So, whatever the fats that are absorbed in the intestine will go into the venous blood in the form of cyclomicron droplets. So, fats are going to be removed from the intestine. Fine. So, first, it supplies absorbed fats. It supplies absorbed fats from the intestine to the venous blood in the form of cyclomicron droplets. Right? That's the first function. The next function, it transfers nutrients from blood to the tissues and collects waste material from the tissue and pours them back into the blood. Obviously, you cannot have blood going into the tissue, especially the small tissues. So it's the lymph that would supply them with nutrients and would collect the waste products and pour it into the venous blood. Fine, do you get this in here? So it transfers nutrients from blood to the tissues, and collects waste material from the tissue and pours it back into the blood. Right? Then it serves to return excess tissue fluid and metabolites to the blood. Right? So what are the excess tissue fluids that are produced? You have certain enzymes that would activate these tissues. So you would have certain amount of excess tissue fluids. These have to be returned back. I cannot store those fluids in the tissue. So they are returned back with the help of your lymph fluid. Right? So it serves to return the excess tissue fluid and metabolites blood. right? Then it returns plasma protein macromolecules from the blood to the blood from the tissue space. So you have certain protein molecules, macromolecules that are there in the tissue space. They have to be returned back to the blood. They had gone into the tissue space during as the pressure of blood increases in the capillary. Certain macromolecules of protein go into the tissue space. So these have to be returned back to the blood. That is done with the help of lymph. Okay. So it returns plasma proteins macromolecules. It returns plasma protein macromolecules to the blood from tissue space, right? And finally, it acts as a filter. At the lymph node against foreign germs. Okay, I'll tell you what is the lymph node. It acts at lymph node against foreign germs.
So is this because it has WBCs?
Yes. Find we get this in here. Now, we've seen what is lymph, the formation of lymph, the functions of lymph. Let us see the circulation of lymph. Let us see the circulation of lymph. Now lymph, as we know, is derived from intestinal fluid. It flows into the lymphatic capillaries. Now, we also know that the capillaries are formed with single layer of endothelial cells which are joined together to form the lymphatic vessels. Right? So how the lymph vessels form? They are formed by repeated joining together of the capillaries. You have multiple capillaries having single endothelial cells. They join together to form the lymphatic vessels, right? The lymphatic vessels join again and again to form a bigger lymphatic vessel, which is called as the lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. It is called as the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. The lymphatic duct drains lymph from the right side of the body as in neck, head, right arm, and from parts of the thorax, and empties it into the venous system at the junction of the subclavian vein and the interjugular vein. Right? The lymph from the lower part of the body and the left side of the head comes together in the chest and flows through the thoracic duct, where it empties itself into the venous system at the junction of the subclavian vein. Right? So you have lymph would flow through the lymph vessels. Lymph vessels would form lymph duct and the thoracic duct. The lymph duct and thoracic duct would empty themselves into the heart. Right? So the basic system is that you would have the lymph system, which would consist of lymph capillaries, lymph vessels, and lymph node. Right? Lymph capillaries, as we said, these are thin-walled vessels that bind to one another and are interwoven with the blood capillaries. They are wider than the blood capillaries and are lined with endothelial. So they have a structure which is very similar to that of lymph vessels. They have a structure which is very similar to that of capillaries. Now, what are lymph vessels? Many capillaries unite together to form lymph vessels. Right? They are thinner walled and they have numerous valves to prevent the backflow. Right? The lymph vessels are further divided into two types: the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. Fine, do we get this thing here? So let's see this. So you would have lymph that would first flow through the both these ducts, that is the thoracic duct and the lymphatic duct, right? The thoracic duct would receive lymph from the entire part of the body except the right side of the head, neck, thorax and the right arm, right? And it extends upwards in front to the vertebral column and opens into the left subclavian vein, right? So it opens into the left superior vena cava, so where it empties itself. Then you have the right lymphatic duct. It is a shorter duct. It receives lymph from the right side of the neck, head, thorax and the right arm, and it opens itself into the right subclavian vein, right? And finally you have the lymph nodes. As I told you that lymph nodes act as a filter. Lymph nodes occur at intervals in the course of the lymph vessel. They are masses of reticular tissues wrapped in a capsule of fibrous tissues. They contain lymphocytes, plasma cells and macrophages. So macrophages would be the ones that would eat away the germs, right? And they are maximum in number in the armpits and the groin. And their function is to filter out, lymph is filtered out in the lymph node, and they also provide, they have lymphocytes and antibodies which provide immunity, right? So that's your entire circulation of lymph. So it starts from the tissue, goes into the lymph capillaries, then the lymph vessels, and finally empties itself into the superior and the inferior vena cava. Right? Do we get this thing here? So I can say that before circulation of lymph, let us first see the lymphatic system. What is it made up of? Lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is made up of, consists of, first it consists of lymph, which I have already explained to you. Then it is made up of lymph capillaries, it is made up of lymphatic vessels, and lymph nodes. So that is what your lymphatic system is made up of. Four things: lymph capillaries, lymphatic vessels and lymph nodes. Right? Do we get this in here? Now let's see each one of them. Lymph, I have already explained to you what is lymph. Right? Now let's see lymphatic capillaries. Now what are lymph capillaries? Lymph capillaries, they are thin-walled vessels and bind at one end, and interwoven with blood capillaries. So they are interwoven with blood capillaries, they are thin-walled vessels, they bind to one end of the blood capillaries and they are interwoven with blood capillaries. Fine? They are wider than the blood capillaries. They are wider than blood capillaries. They are wider than blood capillaries and are lined with endothelium. Lined with endothelium. So that's my lymph capillaries. So they are connected to one end of the capillaries, blood capillaries. They are interwoven with blood capillaries, and they are made up of a single layer of endothelium. They are thin walled and they are slightly wider than the capillaries. So that was the lymph capillaries. Lymph, I have explained to you lymph capillaries. Let's see lymphatic vessels. Now, lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic capillaries unite together to form lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic capillaries unite together to form lymphatic vessels. Right, that's how lymphatic vessels are formed. They have thinner walls and numerous valves to prevent backflow. They have thinner walls and numerous valves to prevent backflow. Right? The two main lymph vessels are there are two types of lymph vessels. One is the thoracic duct and the second is the right lymphatic duct. Right? So that was lymph vessel. So lymphatic system is made up of lymph. I already told you what is lymph. It is made up of lymph capillaries. We have done that. It is made up of lymphatic vessels. Now let's see the two different types of lymphatic vessels. First, let us see the thoracic duct. Right? Now, the thoracic duct, it receives lymph from the entire body. It receives lymph from entire body except the right side of the head, right side of head, neck and thorax.
So right side of neck.
Yeah, right side of neck and thorax and the right arm. So that's from where it is going to receive lymph, right? It arises from receptaculum chyli. Right? The thoracic duct arises from something called as a receptaculum chyli. Right? Now, it receives lymph. Now, the lymph that is going to come in will contain absorbed fats, and due to the absorbed fats, it is going to have a milky appearance, and therefore, this lymph that comes in is called as lacteals. Right? So, it receives lacteals. What are lacteals? The lymph that contains absorbed fats having milky appearance is called as lacteals. So I can say that it receives lacteals from the intestine. As I told you, what are lacteals? These are nothing but these are lymph that come from the intestine. They have a milky appearance and they have high content of absorbed fats. Right? Where does it go? It extends upward in front of the vertebral column. It extends upwards in front of vertebral column and opens into the lung and opens into the left subclavicle vein. That is my thoracic duct.
Where is this subclavian?
It is near your inferior vena cava. Okay. Then you have the thoracic duct. Then you have the right lymphatic duct. Right lymphatic duct. Now the right lymphatic duct, it is a short duct. It is a shorter duct. Right, it is a shorter duct. It receives lymph from the right side of the head. It receives lymph from right side of head, neck, thorax and right arm. Right? It opens into the right subclavian vein. It opens into the right subclavian vein. So that's my right lymphatic duct. Now the lymphatic system is made up of lymph capillary, lymph vessels, thoracic duct, right lymphatic duct, and it is also made up of the lymph node. Right? Now, what are lymph nodes?
So none of the lymphatic ducts open into superior vena cava.
Excuse me?
None of the lymphatic ducts enter into superior vena cava.
Yes, they both open into the
Inferior.
lymph nodes. Now, what are lymph nodes? These are nodes of lymphoid tissues which occur at intervals. These are nodes of lymphoid tissues which occur at intervals all along the lymphatic stream. All along the lymphatic stream, especially in the armpit. Armpit, groin and neck. These are the regions where you have more lymphatic nodes. Right? What do they contain?
What's groin?
Groin is your pelvic area. Right? Then they contain leukocytes. They contain leukocytes and macrophage, which are phagocytes. And remove harmful microorganisms. systems. So that is my entire lymph, right? So they occur at interval. They are nothing but they are nodes of lymphoid tissues. They contain lymphatic plasma and they contain macrophage. Um, lymph nodes have an inner border called as hilum. Lymph nodes have an inner border called as hilum, and number of partitions called trabeculae, right? So the basic function of lymph node is to filter, lymph is filtered in the lymph nodes, right? Lymph is filtered in lymph node, right? That's it. So those were the different types of lymphatic system. Now let's see the circulation of lymph. Now that we know what is the lymphatic system, we can exactly tell you how it moves. This was my head. Circulation of lymph. Right? Now, so lymph, as we said, it is derived from the intestinal fluid and it flows into the lymphatic capillaries. The first thing it will do is from the intestinal fluid will flow into the lymphatic capillaries. It is derived from intestinal fluid and flows into lymph capillaries. That's the first thing it will go into. The intestinal fluid will go into the lymph capillaries. Right? Now, then these lymph capillaries will join to form lymph vessels. Right? Which repeatedly join to form lymph vessels. So the intestinal fluid first goes into the lymph capillaries. These lymph capillaries join to form the lymphatic vessels, right? And the lymphatic vessels then join together to form the two big lymphatic vessels, which is the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct, right? Lymph vessels join to form the two big lymphatic vessels, the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. Right? So intestinal fluid goes into the lymph capillaries, from there goes into the lymph vessel, from there goes into the thoracic and the right lymphatic duct. Right? The right lymphatic duct, as I told you, it drains lymph from the right side of the body, that is, and empties it into the venous system at the junction of the right subclavian vein, right? And the thoracic duct then empties the venous blood into the left subclavian vein, right? And then along the stream of the lymph, you have the lymph nodes which filter out lymph, right? So I can say that the thoracic duct drains lymph into venous system at subclavian vein, and the right at the left subclavian vein, and the right lymphatic duct drains lymph into venous system. We've already done this when we studied our lymphatic system. Into the at right subclavian vein. So that's my circulation of lymph, right? Do we get this in here? So we've learnt what each of this part does, right? If you want, I could also tell you what are lacterals. Lacterals, if you want, I'll give you the definition of them. Remember, I told you that they receive lacterals. Somewhere I had given you this, right? Lacteals, right? It is nothing but it is milky colored lymph capillary found in the villi of the small intestine, right? It is milky colored lymph capillary found in the villi of small intestine. Milky colored because they contain the dissolved fat molecules, right? They contain milky appearance because of the absorbed fats, right? Do you get this in here? Right. This finishes your structure of lymph. We stop this here for the day. Thank you very much.